Dylan Thomas, this is a villanelle. That's the name of the structure or the kind of poem it is. Very, very difficult form to compose because of how intricate the lines are. All right? Notice, first and third lines of the initial tercet. A tercet is a 3-line stanza. First and third lines of the initial tercet rhyme. These rhymes are then repeated in each subsequent tercet and in the final 2 lines of the quatrain. Moreover, line 1 appears, again, in its entirety as lines 6, 12, and 18, while line 3 appears as lines 9, 15, and 19. Okay? Dylan Thomas died of alcoholism at the age of 39. Usually around the year at this time, you can see something on TV based upon Dylan Thomas's childhood. It's called A Child's Christmas in Wales. It's based upon something he wrote. I've never actually read it. I have seen I don't remember how long it is, half an hour maybe. Very well done, very beautiful. So, do not go gentle into that good night. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men, who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Okay? Notice how do not go gentle into that good night. It's the exact opposite of the beginning of John Donne's valediction forbidding mourning. As virtuous men pass mildly away, and some say the soul goes now, and some say nay. Those people die so quietly, nobody knows when they actually die. This speaker is saying, don't die that way. All right? This is 786 in the 11th edition, 982 in the 10th. Sorry. Okay? So, then in the subsequent stanzas, we get descriptions of different kinds of men. So stanza 2, wise men. Stanza 3, good men. Stanza 4, wild men. Stanza 5, grave men. And then the last stanza, father. All right? So, wise men, though wise men at their end know dark is right. What does that mean? They know at their end, that is, at death, dark is right. That is, you're going to die, and there's going to be, proverbial darkness. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. These are wise men. What's meant by wisdom or wise men? These are people who should know and understand what? Kind of supposedly how the world works, how death works. I don't mean the intricacies of death, but you live a certain length and then you die, and happens to everybody, right? Kind of what Claudius and Gertrude tell Hamlet. Everybody dies. Why is it so particular with you? So, though wise men know at their end dark is right, what? They still don't go gentle into that good night. Why? Because their words had forked no lightning. What does that mean? Their words had forked no lightning. What does lightning do? Especially in a night sky. Does it during the daytime too, but more noticeable at night. It casts light. Where something is dark, you see the lightning and it lights up momentarily. Okay? Their words, notice, don't do what? The words of the wise men don't shed any light in the darkness. So how wise are they? Their words don't give comfort to those preparing to die. That's why they do not go gentle into that good night. They know darkness is right, when you die, and yet, does that make them feel any better about death? No, it doesn't. Good men, so we move from wise men to good men. The last wave by. Last wave can mean the last wave of life, that is, and then you're dead. Or it can mean the last wave of good men, like after them, there won't be any more good men. Or it can mean the last wave, like I'm leaving now. I'm dying.
If it was that by, wouldn't it be BYE? Because the last wave by, I think you refers to, like you said, the people, wave of people.
Not BYE as in BUY as in purchase, or no, you said BYE.
BYE as in like goodbye, but the last wave by could be the wave of.
Yeah, it could be the wave of, okay. But even the last wave by, it doesn't, the by there doesn't have to be spelled the BYE. Okay? So, they do what? They cry how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. What? How bright? That implies light, right? Shining, being seen. Their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. What are the frail deeds? And what is this green bay he's talking about? Frail deeds, okay, what kind of men are these? These are good men. I think frail deeds is referring to, quote unquote, good deeds. They, notice, cry, we're told, because their good deeds might have danced in a green bay. What? Danced in a green bay. Won awards, like won accolades or accomplishments. If a celebrity, I don't care what kind of celebrity, oftentimes when celebrities, quote unquote, do good deeds, how do we know about it? Media. How does the media know about it? Because the celebrity makes sure the media knows about it. They put it on TikTok, they put it on Instagram, their publicists put it out there, it's on Twitter, it's, oh look, so-and-so donated XYZ. Or, oh look, so-and-so worked in the, soup kitchen for Thanksgiving, showing they're just like, the rest of us, so to speak. Okay? I think that dancing in a, what is it, the language? Dancing in a green bay, kind of suggesting, they think they should have earned them more. All right? And so what do? They rage against the dying of the light. Well, why are they raging? Because they get to a point of death and it's like, what did all my good deeds buy me? What did all my good deeds get me? I'm still dying. Wild men, okay, wild men, people who cannot be governed. I don't mean literally governed, I mean, who caught and sang the sun in flight. Think the end of marvels to his coy mistress. Though we cannot make the sun stand still, yet we will make him run. Wild men are people who say, I'm going to live life to the fullest. I'm going to die going out strong. It's like when Henry David Thoreau in Walden says, I think it's kind of towards the end of it, he wants to know that when he's on his deathbed, he lived life to its fullest. That he will have sucked all the marrow out of life. Rather than lying there going, I should have done. Okay? Wild men aren't going to have any of the I should have done's. Right? Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late. They grieved it on its way. Meaning, didn't do them any good. It didn't do them any good to say, I'm going to get everything I can out of this life. They do what? They do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men, notice the pun. Grave means serious, and it also, in the context of this line and this stanza, mean men really close to the grave. Death has a wonderful way of doing what? Focusing one's sight, focusing priorities, okay? Grave men near death, and that's one of the reasons why they're grave, they're serious, who see with blinding sight. Why do they see with blinding sight? There's a song from the 70s. I can see clearly now, the rain has gone. Well, part of that idea, they see with blinding sight because they know it's like the next step. Okay? They see what with blinding sight? That blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. That blind eyes. Now this might mean literal blindness, not seeing the world, could blaze, shine forth. What? Like meteors. And be gay, joyful, happy, blissful. How do meteors shine? Why not comets? Comets stay up for a long time. Weeks. Meteors? We just had the Perseid meteor shower a couple days ago. It's like, psh. So what do you want to be? Do you want to be a comet? Long, slow blaze? Or do you want to go out like that? They do what? They rage against the dying of the light. They're on their deathbed. And you. And notice how the speaker brings it home. He's talking about kinds of people out there. And you, my Father. Makes it much more personal. There on the sad height. What's the sad height? Overlooking death. Like Moses on Mount Gilead. He can look into the promised land, but he can't go in it. Okay? It's like the Father's just getting ready to die. And you, my Father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now. With your fierce tears, I pray. Why curse? Why bless? What do those two terms incorporate?
Heaven or hell?
Could be. Everything. I mean, that's the spectrum. Cursing at this end, blessing at this end, and everything in between. In other words, Dad, I don't give a damn what you say. But, what? Say something. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. Now, if we read this in a sense kind of literally, what, apparently, is the Father doing at this point? In you, my Father, there on the sad height. The Father's not speaking. The child wants the Father to speak, or the speaker wants the Father to speak. Why might the Father not be speaking? Well, if he's on his deathbed, he might not be able to speak. And what's the son or daughter asking for? I don't know if you've had a parent die. Both mine died my mom died 6 years ago, 5 years ago. My dad 2 years ago. He's probably the speaker, whether it's male or female is not told, is probably thinking, one last word. Just say something. Anything. That's why it's curse or bless me. I don't care if you say F you or I love you. It's The sound of the voice that the speaker is implying is important. All right? So go from there to Death Be Not Proud, 8:19. And I'll tell you right now, I'm gonna, I posted, the videos over the weekend, because we're not gonna get through all of these today. It's too far. I am going to post another video for the ones that we don't cover today. For those who want to watch it, you're by no means required to. Okay, Death Be Not Proud, John Donne. It's one of his holy sonnets. We're going to read two of his holy sonnets. Gives you a date of 1611. We have no idea when Donne wrote this. My dissertation was an edition of all of these sonnets. So I'm very familiar with their history, all the manuscripts, all that kind of, because I've looked at all of them. We don't know when Donne actually wrote this, okay? So he's addressing death. Death be not proud. Many of the manuscripts, by the way, have a comma after death. So death is in what's called the vocative case. Death is being called out, all right? Death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. So don't be so full of yourself, death. You're not as mighty and proud as you think you are, even though some people have told you that. For those whom thou thinkst thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. So, you think you throw people over, that is, you kill people, but they're not really dead, and you can't kill me. What do you mean they're not really dead, and you can't kill me? From rest and sleep, which what thy picture be, much pleasure. Then from thee much more must flow. Okay? Notice, rest and sleep are pictures of death. Remember when we talked about Plato and Platonic ideals, the allegory of the cave and all that? Everything down here is what of the real reality? It's a shadow. It's an image. Donne is using that exact same language. Sleep and rest are images of death. Okay? Go back to the Platonic idea. Where's the real reality? Where's the real joy and all that? It's up there where the reality is. So he's saying, we get pleasure from from sleep and rest, right? You pull a long shift. I've got, one student who's usually in this classroom who works third shift at Taco Bell, so just the drive-through. And she comes into class, she's not here today, nearly every day, and she's sitting back there and nodding asleep because she's been awake from 11 to 7 and then comes to class kind of a thing, all right? I'm sure when she goes to sleep, it's like, okay? So, from rest and sleep, we're told much pleasure. So, if we get much pleasure from the images, how much more pleasure will we get from the reality? Real death. Notice, very different from Dylan Thomas's do not go gentle on the back good night. So, then from thee much more must flow, that is, much more pleasure. And soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Notice, best men. The best there, that implies a moral quality. He doesn't mean, the people everybody look up to. The athletes, the celebrities, the politicians, the whoever's. He means the goodest people, the best morally, okay, spiritually, so to speak, people. What do they get? Rest of their bones, requiescat in pacem, is the old phrase put on a tombstone, rest in peace, and souls delivery. The soul gets to leave the body. Thou art slave. Death, still being addressed. Death is a slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men. What do you mean by desperate men? This could be an illusion, not positive. Christopher Marlowe, who we read, died in a pub fight. He was stabbed in a bar. Okay? There are allusions to that death in a couple of places. Shakespeare, for one, alludes to Marlowe's death in one of his plays, right? And there's something, if I remember correctly, in the play about, desperate men. So Donne might be alluding to that. Donne very well could have known Christopher Marlowe. He was old enough to, all right? And all the poets, hung out together and drank together and all that kind of stuff. So, thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men. Why? Because fate kills us, chance kills us, kings kill us. Not anymore, but they definitely did back then. And desperate men knifing us in alleyways and things like that kill us. And dust with poison, war, and sickness dwell, right? Because poison kills you, war kills you, and sickness can kill you. And poppy or charms can make us sleep as well. Okay, poppy, opium. He is literally talking about drugs. People think, drugs are not new. Ancient Romans knew about the joys, let's say, of opium, okay? Poppy or charms can make us sleep as well. That is, as well as death, and better than thy stroke. I've wrestled with this line for 30 years. What does he mean in better than thy stroke? How can poppy, an opium overdose, or a drug overdose, help us sleep better than death? Well, what happens with an overdose? Never had one personally happen, so speaking from reading history. You just gently drift off. Like, had multiple surgeries. Knees, like 15 times between the two of them. Okay? Shoulders, etc. What do you do when you go into surgery? The anesthesiologist comes in and it's like, by the time we get you in there, or usually by the time after we roll you on the gurney, you're going to be drifting off. And you can feel it coming. And that's what he implies. That slow drifting off. Why swellst thou then? Swellst. Puffed up with pride. Like, got another one. One short sleep past, we wake eternally. Some of the manuscripts, major manuscripts of this poem, some of the manuscripts read, one short sleep past, we live eternally. Juxtaposing the idea of sleep being an image of death and rising, resurrection, living eternally. Most of us think the wake is Donne's ultimate intended reading, whether it's the final reading or not, okay? Because it's the harder of the two. Sleeping and living, or dying and living, make more sense. So, when short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Why? Because what does St. Paul say in the New Testament? O grave, where is thy victory? Death, where is thy victory? O grave, where is thy sting? And then he goes on and says, and death will be the last enemy destroyed. Death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Okay, so we don't have to worry about death. Now turn to, I just put a thing in here to mark it. Nope, not that one. Not that one. Nope, not that one. 1050. Did not put a thing on there. Another one by John Donne, Batter My Heart. Okay? Batter My Heart, three-person God. Notice, short, declarative. What's that mean? Batter my heart. Like, battering ram. This is 1050 in the 11th edition, 1348 in the 10th edition. Beat the door down of my heart, God. For you as yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend. Notice, what's the difference between battering and knocking? If the police come to visit you, what do you want to happen? You don't want the battering ram busting through your door. By the way, if the FBI does that, comes in, busts through your door, they don't have to pay any damages. Literally, they don't have to pay any damages that they do to your house. So, you as yet but not breathe, shine, and seek to mend. Each of those is a biblical allusion. Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. Those who let me in, I'll come in and, etc. Breathe. The Lord breathes upon the disciples, granting them the gift of the Holy Spirit, etc. Shine. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you is an Old Testament prayer. Okay. And seek to mend. David prays that God would create in him a clean heart and renew a right spirit within him. All right? That I may rise and stand, overthrow me, and bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. Well, that kind of doesn't make sense. That I can rise and stand means I'm either sitting or laying flat. So that I can get up, God, what? Knock me down. So I'm going to get up and you're going to knock me down? Yeah, that's exactly it. So what does the rise and stand ultimately means? So I can rise and stand like the elders described in the both Old Testament and Book of Revelation in the presence of God. What do? They stand always, except for when they fall down and worship. That I may rise and stand, overthrow me, and bend your force. That is, direct your attention to break, blow, burn, and make me new. Again, more biblical images. Because Jesus uses, and the Old Testament uses, this imagery of threshing wheat repeatedly. What do you do when you thresh wheat? Whether you do it with a millstone on the ground or something like that, or you do it in your hands. Get some kernels of wheat that are ripe, ready to be harvested. Put them in your hands. Do that and this. And it separates the actual wheat kernel from the hull, the stuff you're not going to use. So you break it, blow the hull, the chaff away, burn that, and then you use the kernel to make me new. What's the kernel of the soul? Create in me a new heart. It's remaking the speaker. New image. So it's no longer talking about the heart. I, like a usurped town to another do, labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. Reason, your viceroy, in me should defend, but is captive and proves weak or untrue. So I am like a usurped town. I want to admit you. I want to open the gates of the town, but I can't, the speaker says. Why not? Because reason, your viceroy in me. What's viceroy? Roy means king. Vice, like vice president. The vice king in me, that is reason, the speaker is saying, is God's representative in the individual. So your representative, the person standing in your place in me, proves weak, ineffective, ineffectual, not strong, or untrue. Notice, weak and untrue, those are not synonyms. Untrue means false, disloyal. Reason is disloyal to you, God. Yet dearly I love you. Like, oh, but I really do love you. And would be loved fain, that is, in return. But am betrothed unto your enemy. Betrothed, engaged. Okay, that terminology actually implies like there is a bond. There is something connecting the one person to the person that individual is betrothed to. Okay? So I love you, and I want you to love me back, but I'm engaged to your enemy. Divorce me. That's asking God, come down, break the tie that binds me to your enemy. Divorce me, untie, or break that knot. The betrothal knot. Who's the enemy? Sin, Satan, death. All of those, because they're all related, all right? So, separate me from those things. Take me to you. That means reach down and pull me out. All right? Imprison me. Make me your prisoner. God, why? Because I, unless, that's what accept means, you enthrall me. What's it mean to be enthralled? Enslaved. Unless you enslave me, unless I become your slave, I'll never be free. How's that for a paradox? How can you be enslaved and free? Because Dunn, who's a preacher, he's not a preacher probably at the time these are written, okay? He becomes a preacher in 1650. Almost positive that all the sonnets are written, most of the sonnets are written before then, okay? It's got a date of 1610. It's absolutely asinine. We don't know that this poem was written in 1610, okay? The speaker is saying, I can't be free unless I'm in your slavery. St. Paul talks a lot about being enslaved to God, which grants freedom, all right? And then Dunn, pulls out the final image, which a lot of people have problems with. Nor ever chaste. I can't be chaste, which means pure. Except unless you ravish me. Ravish has two meanings. The immediate one is rape. I can't be pure unless you rape me, God. Now, does this mean sexually rape? No, it doesn't. But the language does imply that, okay? Within Dunn scholarly circles, there's a very famous article written in the late 70s, early 80s, titled, Dunn's Divine Rapist, batter my heart, all right? So what's the other meaning for ravish? To be removed from the body, or popular Protestant terminology, to be raptured. According to Protestant theology, most Protestant theology, when Jesus returns again, what is going to happen to all the good Christians? They'll immediately be taken up into heaven. What's going to happen to everybody else? They're going to stay down here, depending on one's theology, and maybe suffer through 1,000 years of Satan being in charge and everything. Okay? And so you get films, the people being raptured into heaven, and then the rest of us down here, planes crashing because the pilot was, no longer in the plane, cars crashing, etc. What's the speaker suggesting, however? Until I am 100% yours, God, that's what the ravish implies, I won't be chaste. You got to have all of me. What is the problem that the minister and the minister's black veil points out about people? Everybody's wearing a black veil. Why? Because they've not been, so to speak, ravished by God. They haven't been taken entirely. There's one little part that they say, nope, you can't have this. Dunn's essentially saying, until God gets all of you, he gets none of you. Okay? Go from there to, because I could not stop for death. 847 and 1062 in the 10th edition. Okay? You're not required to. I don't think anything shows up on the exam. But I would encourage you to read it's very short, introduction to Emily Dickinson's life. She's a strange bird. She's just kind of an odd person. Because I could not stop for death. Look at the imagery in this one. Because I could not stop for death, and you have that dash. She uses dashes a lot. The dash implies a pause. He kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. So why couldn't the speaker stop for death? How many of you know the exact moment you're going to die? None of us do. I mean, unless you commit suicide. None of us do. So, why does the speaker say, because I could not? How many of you, I'll ask this question, are totally okay with dying today? Yes, a bunch of facial reactions are like, well, okay, if I have to, but not really. Why not? Most of you, or I think all of you, maybe late teens, but early 20s. What do you have ahead of you? Rest in what goes with your life. Have you done everything you want to do in your lives already? You've achieved all your goals, your bucket list, everything is checked off? Probably not. That is why the speaker could not stop for death. Too busy. Got things to do, people to see, places to go. But because I couldn't stop, what? Death stopped for me. What's that mean? Death came anyways. Right? Because we don't know when death comes. The carriage held but just ourselves. I love this line. And immortality. The speaker gets in the carriage with death, and what is in the carriage? Immortality. Can't really say the future, because the future implies what? Time. See, immortality doesn't imply time. Immortality implies deathlessness. Okay? We slowly drove. He knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. So why does death know no haste? Why is death not in a hurry? Okay, because they're immortal, because the speaker is immortal. Why else? I mean, it's built on that. What do you have yet to do when you're dead? Right? What are you in a rush for? If you're in a rush for something today, it's because you need to get that done, because you have other things that also need to be gotten done. But when you're in immortality, there's nothing yet to do. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing green. We passed the setting sun. Notice the imagery again from the first stanza. The speaker gets into the carriage, and death just kind of slowly drives the carriage on. I kind of like to, you don't have to by any means. I have the image of death personified, kind of like as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. What's the actor's name? Driving me crazy, I can't remember. I remember it in the first class, I couldn't remember Rhett Butler. Dressed to the nines, gentleman caller, like picking her up for a date. Okay? So why do they pass the school, and what are the children doing? So they're heading which direction? West, towards the setting sun. What's the children in the ring in the school? What's that imply? Life's going on out there. What are the children playing in the ring, or what is the ring? Could be like a playground area. A lot of scholars think this is referring to in the ring, like Ring Around the Roses. What does that game harken back to?
Death.
How so?
Pocket full of posies.
It's the Black Death. The pocket full of posies are the flowers brought for the dead, and the symptoms of the Black Plague, we all fall down. You knew back in the Middle Ages, if the plague is in the area and you start sneezing, odds were you're going to be falling down very soon. We passed the setting sun, or rather he passed us. How could the setting sun pass them? The dews grew quivering and chill. For only gossamer my gown, my tippet only told. How does dew form, and where does dew form? And notice we're told it drew quivering.
Early morning.
Louder?
Dew forms early morning.
Forms early morning. Where? Does it form on tree trunks and branches? No. It forms on the ground. So it drew like it was drawn to the ground, and we're told quivering and chill, because it has to be chilly for dew to form. And it, the dew, the gossamer pattern that it creates on the ground is the speaker's gown. Is the speaker female then? Possibly. My tippet only tulle. Tulle is another kind of fabric, okay? But I think the fact that we're now described as, we get descriptions of the ground and the dew forming on the ground, and the gossamer as the speaker's gown. What does a gown do? Covers the body, right? So gossamer, what's gossamer? It's like real thin threads. If you go out on an early morning, in pretty much any grassy area that has dew, and you look closely, what else are you going to see? Little spider webs. That's the clothing. So where's the speaker? In the grave. All right? We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. If you go to a funeral service and you go to the graveside portion of the funeral service and you see the coffin or casket put in the ground, and if you stay there long enough, you'll see the ditch diggers cover it up. Do they cover it up so that the ground remains level? No, they don't. Not good ones. You mound the dirt over the coffin, because what's going to happen? That dirt will settle. And back before we had, concrete enclosures for coffins and such, some states require that, and the coffin was just made of wood, what would happen to the coffin after a few years? The roof caves in, so the ground subsides even more. If you don't put enough dirt on top, you can go to a lot of cemeteries and see this, you'll see a hollow spot in the ground. Right? So here we're told there is a swelling of the ground. That is, this isn't a 1,000-year-old grave, but it's not a 1-year-old grave either. There's still some swelling of the ground, but it's not totally mounded over. The roof was scarcely visible. The cornice in the ground. What's a cornice? It's the thing that is at the top of a column, okay? Or it is the decorative trim and such that is on the fascia around the top or just beneath the roof of a building. It's the highest point, in other words, before the actual roof. So the roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. What's the roof and cornice? The cornice is the part that is holding up a tombstone. It's in the ground. And the only part that is barely visible now is the top of the tombstone. Go to a really old cemetery. You can't find them in the United States. Oldest cemeteries we have are not even 400 years old. Okay, 350 years old. Not old enough. Go to one in England or Europe that's 1,000 years old or 1,500 years old. Actually, take that back. Some of the ones in the Northeast, because I remember one in Boston, where you'll see maybe this much of a tombstone that's this big. Why does that happen? Gravity sucks that tombstone down. Okay? Since then, 'tis centuries. So notice from the beginning of the poem to now, centuries have gone by. And yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Why does it feel shorter than that day? Because in that day, that is the day the speaker died, before death the speaker was bound by time. Now, the speaker is immortal, and time is irrelevant. Time doesn't mean anything anymore because the speaker's outside time. Okay, turn from there to, what time is it? 9:55, we've got time. To, I know that he exists. On page 859 or 1080 in the 10th edition. I know that he exists. He is capitalized. Probably implies somebody really important. When do we usually capitalize, or you don't see it very much anymore. When do we usually capitalize pronouns? Especially masculine ones. Referring to God. I know that he exists. That is an intellectual assertion. That is like saying, like 2 + 2 = 4, I know, right? Somewhere in silence, he has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. I know he exists, and then the very next word, somewhere. That means I know he exists somewhere. He's out there in silence, right? How many of you have literally with your ears heard the voice of God? Probably not any of you, right? Definitely not me. He has hid his rare life. Why is his life rare? How many of you have seen God? Like face to face. He tells Moses, no living man may see my face and live. That's why it's rare. He has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. What's meant by gross there? Not vile, not foul, not disgusting. Common, ordinary. In other words, it's like, to use language that Jesus uses, we don't have eyes to see. We see only gross stuff, in all meanings of the word, gross stuff that is in front of us. Okay? Our eyes aren't finely tuned to see the unseen. 'Tis an instant's play. What 'tis? Okay, 'tis means it is. What is an instant's play? 'Tis a fond ambush. Again, we've not been told what the it is. Just to make Bliss earn her own surprise. So what do you do when you ambush someone? I mean, some of you could say, maybe I come in and I say, okay, today we're going to have an oral quiz. Oral quiz. So I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to say, question. And you have to answer it on the spot. That would be an ambush of sorts, right? How many of you want that to happen? Probably no one. Because you're not expecting it. Now that's a soft, namby-pamby kind of ambush. Ambush generally tends to what kind of human activity or affair? Warfare. What do you do when you ambush an enemy? What's the purpose of an ambush? It's to kill the enemy. It's to get the upper hand and kill them. All right? So, 'tis an instant's play. We don't know yet what the 'tis is. Instant's play, 'tis a fond ambush. Fond. What does it mean if you say, I'm fond of you? I like you. So this is a ambush that this person doing the ambush likes? Possibly. What's another meaning for fond? This meaning has almost totally dropped out in our usage today. It was still alive in Dickinson's day. Foolish. 'Tis a foolish ambush. Okay? But we still don't know what the it refers to. And then we get just to make Bliss earn her own surprise. And that kind of, the way it works is it kind of builds upon and explains what's meant by the ambush and the play. Okay? So what's bliss? And why is it capitalized? Joy, happiness, pleasure maybe. but it's capitalized. And just to make Bliss earn her own surprise. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to the Bliss part in a moment.
Is this still Dickinson?
Pardon?
Is this still Dickinson?
Yeah. But should the play, the ambush, that's what the previous stanza was referring to, but should the play prove piercing earnest, should the glee glaze in death's stiff stare? So, what happens if the play, we're told, the playing, not like a drama play, but whatever's doing the play, the instant play, the ambush, what happens if that playing, that jesting, results in death's stiff stare? What is death's stiff stare? When somebody dies, if they die, in a sense, kind of surprised, eyes are open, and eyes stay open until somebody comes up and does that. Okay? Should the play prove piercing earnest? Piercing how? Stop the heart. Could be a biblical allusion, like it piercing the side. Should the glee glaze? What's glee mean? Used to be, I don't know if it's still on, TV show called Glee. What was it about? High school singing club. Glee club. Glee here doesn't mean singing. Glee in the phrase glee club means joy. It comes from the Old English word glad. And the glad man was the singer of joy, singer of songs, because songs brought joy to people, even though most Old English songs were kind of sad songs about death, okay? Should the play referred to in the previous stanza, prove piercing earnest, that is, deadly serious, should the glee glaze, should the glee, the joy, glaze, like glaze over the eyes in death's stiff stare, would not the fun look too expensive? What's the fun? The play. The instant play, the fond ambush. Would not the jest have crawled too far? What's the jest? We got to go back to that previous stanza. What is the speaker suggesting? Assume for the moment that he is God. What is God's instant play, God's fond ambush that results in bliss? What is, he's hid his rare life from our gross eyes. And then we get the ambush and we get the play. The speaker is suggesting that God, at times, lifts, I'll use language from the minister's black veil, lifts the veil and shows what? His life, his reality, a glimpse of heaven, so to speak. Okay? Go back to this term for a moment. Why are these people, if you accept this Protestant idea, why are they raptured? What do they see in the heavens? What does Jesus say just before the ascension? You will see the Son of Man coming the same way he left, in the clouds. And it's like they see their Lord, and that is what takes them out of this life. They die instantly at that moment and become, one with Jesus, so to speak. The speaker is suggesting that God every now and then goes what? How many of you have babysat, know people with little babies that you've been around, etc.? I've got 4 kids, they're all older and boring now. But when they were young, we'd do something, get a blanket, hold it, if I could open this up, over the face and do what? Peekaboo, and do that. And what does the kid do? Doesn't matter the kid. Everyone laughs and giggles. That's the play. That's the idea. that God goes every now and then, peekaboo, but what does it do? No one can see my face and live. The person immediately dies. That's why, last stanza, would not the fun look too expensive? Like, come on, God. He just killed somebody for your pleasure, so to speak. That's the idea the speaker is getting across. Okay, we'll stop there. So I will, for those who want it, again, you don't have to, I'll put up a video that includes everything from the caller to the rest of the syllabus. All right? Yeah, that won't be a problem. Actually, the La Belle Dame Songs Merci is in one of the videos I sent over the weekend. I don't remember which one. I actually mentioned, I believe, in the comment about the video, about it, but I'll still try to do one that includes that. The caller is available via the link that's on your syllabus, as is the parody Dover Bitch, which is a reply to Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. Definitely read it because it's pretty funny. Okay,